Imagine waking up tomorrow, walking past a mirror, and having no idea that the creature staring back is you. No name for yourself. No sense that you even exist. Now imagine an elephant, a magpie, or a dolphin figuring out something about themselves that most animals on this planet never will. Stick around, because the last part of this story will completely change how you see the animals around you. Today, we're diving into one of the strangest questions in the animal kingdom. Do animals actually know they exist? Not just are they alive, but do they understand that they are a separate, thinking being, looking out at the world? Scientists have spent decades chasing this answer, and what they found is stranger than fiction. Let's set the scene. For most of human history, we assumed self-awareness was ours alone. Animals, we thought, just reacted. A dog barks because a sound scared it. A fish swims away because a shadow passed overhead. Simple stimulus, simple response. No inner voice, no sense of me. That was the belief for thousands of years. Then, in 1970, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup Jr. decided to test that belief with a wild idea. He wanted to know if an animal could recognize itself in a mirror. Not just see a reflection and think it's another animal, but actually understand that's me. So he came up with a clever trick. He took chimpanzees, waited until they were asleep, and quietly dabbed a small red mark on their forehead. Somewhere they couldn't see it without a mirror. No smell, no feeling, nothing that would give it away. When the chimps woke up and wandered over to a mirror, something incredible happened. Instead of touching the mirror or acting like they saw a stranger, they reached up and touched their own foreheads. They were checking their own faces. They understood the reflection wasn't another chimp, it was them. That single experiment became known as the mirror test, and it changed everything. If an animal touches the mark on its own body instead of the glass, scientists take that as a sign the animal has a basic sense of self. For years, only a small handful of animals passed. Chimpanzees, orangutans, bottlenose dolphins, even magpies, a type of bird, stunned researchers by passing the test too. Something nobody expected from a creature with a brain the size of a walnut. But here's where the story gets even wilder. In 2005, at the Bronx Zoo in New York, researchers ran the mirror test on an Asian elephant named Happy. They painted a visible white mark on her head and a hidden mark elsewhere on her body as a control, so they could rule out that she was just reacting to touch or smell. Then they placed a massive mirror in her enclosure. Happy walked up to the mirror, and instead of trying to attack it or ignore it like most animals do, she started moving her trunk directly toward the visible mark on her own forehead. She rubbed at it repeatedly, clearly investigating something on her own body that she could only have noticed by watching her reflection. She ignored the hidden mark completely. That told researchers something huge. Happy wasn't just seeing an elephant in the mirror, she knew that elephant was her. Now pause and imagine being in that zoo enclosure, watching an animal the size of a small truck realize for the very first time that it is looking at itself. Not a strange elephant intruder, not a threat, just itself. That moment blurred the line between just an animal and something far closer to us than we ever imagined. And elephants weren't done surprising us. In the wild, they've been seen doing something almost nobody expects from an animal: mourning. Elephant herds have been documented standing quietly around the bones of a dead herd member, gently touching the skull and tusks with their trunks, sometimes for hours, sometimes returning to the same spot years later. Scientists don't fully know what's happening inside their minds, but this kind of behavior doesn't look like simple instinct. It looks like memory. It looks like grief. And grief requires something deeper than reaction. It requires a sense of loss, which only makes sense if the animal understands there was a someone to lose. Dolphins pushed this idea even further. Researchers studying bottlenose dolphins found they don't just recognize themselves in mirrors, they seem to enjoy it. Dolphins have been filmed twisting their bodies, blowing bubbles, and posing in front of mirrors, almost like they're checking themselves out, the same way a person might glance at a window reflection while walking down the street. That's not blind instinct. That looks like curiosity about their own body and appearance. Before we get to the twist, there's one more piece of this puzzle that scientists almost overlooked completely. It involves a fish. Yes, a fish. For years, nobody bothered testing fish with the mirror experiment because the assumption was that fish are simple, instinct-driven creatures with barely any awareness at all. Then, a team of researchers decided to try it anyway, using a small reef fish called the cleaner wrasse. They marked the fish with a spot of colored gel on its throat, right where it couldn't see the mark without a mirror, just like they'd done with the chimps decades earlier. What happened next stunned the scientific world. The wrasse swam to the mirror, noticed the strange mark, then scraped its throat against a rock, trying to remove it, before swimming straight back to check if it had worked. It repeated this checking behavior over and over, almost exactly like the chimpanzees did years before. A fish, with a brain a tiny fraction the size of ours, appeared to understand that the reflection was showing its own body, and that something on that body needed fixing. Researchers debated the meaning, but one thing was clear. The old assumption that awareness only belonged to smart animals was starting to crumble. Here's the part that really flips the story upside down, though. For a long time, humans assumed self-awareness only existed in smart animals with big brains, like primates, elephants, and dolphins. Then magpies passed the mirror test. Then, even more shockingly, some ants and cleaner fish started showing behaviors and experiments that hinted at self-recognition too. A creature with a brain smaller than a grain of rice, potentially aware, in some limited way, that it exists. If that's true, then self-awareness might not be some rare, magical trait locked away in a few special animals. It might be scattered across the animal kingdom in ways we're only just beginning to detect, hiding in creatures we never thought to look twice at. So here's the twist that should stop you in your tracks. If a bird, an elephant, or even an insect can have some flicker of "I exist," then maybe the wall we built between humans and animals was never as solid as we believed. Maybe self-awareness isn't a light switch that's either fully on in humans and fully off in everything else. Maybe it's a dimmer switch, turned up high in some creatures and turned down low in others, but never completely dark. Think about what that means. Every time an elephant touches its own reflection, every time a dolphin studies its own body in the water, every time a magpie stares at the mark on its feathers, these animals are having a moment we usually think belongs only to us. The realization that they are a self, separate from the world around them, and separate from every other creature out there. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside this story. We spent so long searching the animal kingdom for creatures smart enough to know they exist, when really, the deeper question is what we do with that knowledge ourselves. Humans know we exist every single day, yet how often do we actually stop, look in the mirror, and truly understand who's looking back? An elephant needed a painted mark and a mirror to prove it recognized itself. We have that awareness every waking moment, and most of us barely use it to reflect on our own lives at all. So the next time you glance in a mirror, remember Happy the elephant, touching her own forehead in wonder. Remember the dolphin twisting through the water, admiring its own reflection. Somewhere out there, right now, another mind, wrapped in fur, feathers, or skin, completely different from yours, might be looking at itself and quietly realizing the exact same thing you already know. That it exists, that it's alive, and that behind those eyes, there really is someone home.